For the first time in, 15 years, NASCAR is in the headlines on a national level. It seems this week, everyone is talking about NASCAR. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity. But whoever came up with that phrase is full of shit. There is a such thing as negative publicity. And right now, NASCAR is a topic of conversation for all of the wrong reasons. They are learning that lesson the hard way. Just in case you didn't know, I'll give you a brief synopsis of what's been going on with NASCAR, because I know a lot of you guys don't pay attention to it. I don't either. After I explain to you what's going on, I'm going to give you guys something to think about. Something that no one in the media is bringing up as a possibility. Some people on social media have said it. No one in the mainstream media is talking about this, or at least I haven't seen any one of them talking about it. Now, NASCAR had a race last weekend in Talladega. Bubba Wallace, the only African-American driver in NASCAR, was told by the president of NASCAR, Steve Phelps, that a noose was found hanging in his garage or his trailer, whatever they call it. You get the point. In the social and political climate that we are in, this situation naturally exploded once it was brought to the attention of the media. And rightfully so. I mean, you have the only African American in a sport, and I use that term sport loosely when I'm talking about NASCAR. I don't feel like driving a car in a circle 100 or 200 times is an athletic event, but I digress. My personal feelings about NASCAR aside, you have the only African American in NASCAR finding a noose in his trailer. That's a big fucking deal, right? There have long been issues in NASCAR in terms of racism, at least perceived issues. Not with the organization itself, mainly with the fan base. I can't comment one way or another because I've never kept up with NASCAR, but their audience is mostly Southern white males. You see a NASCAR event on TV. You see a lot of Confederate flags flying in the air in the parking lot of the racetrack. I'm from the South, born and raised. I hate the Confederate flag. I don't like what it represents. I've never understood why rednecks have this weird affinity for it. I mean, the South lost the war. It doesn't make any sense to me, so I thought it was a good thing for NASCAR when they decided to distance themselves from the Confederate flag and ban it from its racetracks a couple of weeks ago. So, Bubba Wallace finds a noose in his garage. The rest of the story is where things get interesting. And this should be a lesson to NASCAR. Really, it should be a lesson to everyone about rushing to judgment. We live in a society today where you are guilty until proven innocent. Instead of investigating this incident themselves, acting in a sense of logic instead of acting out of emotion, NASCAR ran directly to the media to report that a noose was found hanging in the trailer of Bubba Wallace. From that point on, this story exploded. The mainstream media, they ran with it. ESPN, Fox Sports 1, all your major sports networks and sports talk radio, they ran with this story. It was trending on social media. At this point, even though this was an ugly situation, NASCAR was at least trying to turn a negative into a positive. The situation actually unified the drivers. They all came together in support of Bubba Wallace. Drivers, pit crew members, whoever else is involved in NASCAR, I don't know. They all walked alongside Bubba Wallace in his number 43 car on the track at Talladega in this show of unity and a show of support. Bubba Wallace was emotional by the outpouring of support he received from his peers. It was a great moment. It was a unifying moment. They all took this atrocious incident, came together, and turned it into something positive. If this story had ended right there, It would have been almost like an episode of a 90s sitcom, Full House, Family Matters, something like that. Bad situation happens at the beginning of the episode. Danny Tanner, Uncle Jesse, they come to the rescue. By the end of the episode, 30 minutes, everyone's crying and hugging. The problem has been solved, right? But the situation did not end there for NASCAR. It did not end there for Bubba Wallace. It was only just the beginning. Long story short, the feds, they come down to Talladega to investigate this incident. They wanted to see if this was actually a hate crime. It did not take the FBI very long to figure out that this wasn't a fucking noose. This wasn't a fucking hate crime against Bubba Wallace. It was a fucking rope tied to a pull-down door on the garage. So someone could pull on the rope and pull the door closed. That was it. The feds found out the rope had been hanging on that door since October of 2019. Now, let's assume for a second that maybe, just maybe, it was meant to be a noose. Well, whoever hung the rope, they wouldn't have had any idea that Bubba Wallace would be assigned to that garage or that trailer. The drivers get assigned to them randomly. So they wouldn't have hung this noose in October of 2019 geared towards Bubba Wallace and could have known that he was going to get assigned to that garage. So this wasn't some inside job. This wasn't some racial injustice. This was a complete overreaction by NASCAR and Bubba Wallace. And they are taking a major fucking beating for it. And they should, rightfully so. The media and people on social media should take shit for this as well. For rushing to conclusions before figuring out what the fuck was going on. But we all know that's not going to happen. You got Jamel Hill on Twitter basically dragging this invisible suspect for supposedly hanging a noose in Bubba Wallace's garage. Turns out that wasn't the case at all. Jamel Hill has went from a sports anchor to some type of civil rights activist. Except she's not really a civil rights activist because all she does is just divide everybody on social media. Anyway, Bubba Wallace, he is not helping his case. He's not helping NASCAR's case in the aftermath of this shitstorm either. The backlash against him and NASCAR is completely justified. But he's not helping by claiming it was a noose in his garage after the feds proved otherwise. Here's what Bubba Wallace had to say the other day. Quote, "The photo evidence I've seen and have in my possession shows it was a garage pull that was a noose. I don't know when we'll get to the point that we'll release that image. It's alerting and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It was definitely in the shape of a noose. It wasn't a functioning noose." End quote. Okay. I don't really know what to say to that. Number one, it wasn't a functioning noose. Okay, I don't know what the fuck that means. Number two, if the picture clearly shows it was a noose, then release the fucking picture. Let everyone see for themselves what it looks like. I mean, you clearly rushed to judgment on this thing. There's not going to be any federal charges filed. So why can't you release the picture? I don't know what the big deal is about that. I'll be honest with you guys. Once I found out the feds determined this rope had been hanging in that garage since last year, something did not seem right to me about this whole situation. I know we're in a strange political climate right now in this country, but this was a serious rush to judgment by everyone involved. I want to give you guys something to think about. I'm not saying that this is exactly what's going on. This is just something that crossed my mind when thinking about this. I'm not usually a conspiracy theorist, but because of my complete lack of trust in the media and major corporations, the media in this country has just went to complete shit. You cannot believe anything you hear out of the mainstream media. And I'm talking about ESPN and Fox Sports too. because we've been lied to so many times by the media, by big corporations, by the power players, it's something that came to my mind as a possibility of what might be going on with NASCAR. NASCAR ratings have been declining for over a decade now. NASCAR, it kind of reminds me of professional wrestling, WWE. Both have the same type of audience, and both hit their peaks around the same time, and have been in decline ever since. Both NASCAR and the WWE, they were both fads. They were popular at one time in the mainstream, drew huge audiences, then once the fad was over, they declined quickly. NASCAR was extremely popular in the late 90s into the early to mid 2000s. Back in 2006, the Daytona 500 peaked with an 11.3 rating, which, if I had to guesstimate, would be around 14 million viewers. Fast forward to 2018, and NASCAR had lost over half of its audience for the Daytona 500. The 2018 Daytona 500 did a 5.3 rating, good for about 6 million viewers. Within the past week or two, NASCAR came out and they banned the Confederate flag from all of their events. Immediately after they came out with that announcement, ratings spiked. They had a Cup Series race on a Wednesday night soon after they banned the Confederate flag. Ratings were up 104% over 2019. That is a massive spike in ratings. The NFL and the NBA, they would consider a huge ratings increase to be 10-20%. After banning the Confederate flag, NASCAR jumped 104% in the ratings. So, just think outside the box for a second. NASCAR, they have been irrelevant for over a decade. They are never a part of the national conversation. They see this huge ratings increase after they decide to ban the Confederate flag. Now, am I the only one, or isn't anyone else wondering whether the whole Bubba Wallace and NASCAR thing was a big publicity stunt? Something to garner sympathy for Bubba Wallace. Something to victimize their only African-American driver so they could create a new superstar in the sport for the country to get behind. Because let's be honest, there are no superstars right now in NASCAR. You used to have Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, I don't know any other NASCAR superstars, but the bottom line is they don't have any superstars in the sport right now. No mainstream level stars. Now, I'm not saying that the rope was set up intentionally by NASCAR or by Bubba Wallace. That's not what I'm saying. But it's hard for me to believe that they see a rope hanging from a garage door, which is something common in garages across America, and they automatically jump to the conclusion that it was a noose, that it was a racial attack towards Bubba Wallace. Then, instead of investigating it for themselves, they run straight to the fucking media. Are you fucking kidding me? They have all of their drivers unite and escort Bubba Wallace's car across Talladega. Looking back at it now, with the information that we have, it looks like the perfect opportunity for a photo op. It looks like they took complete advantage of the situation. I don't know. It all seems a bit suspect to me. This whole thing seems off to me. You can draw your own conclusions, but it's just something to think about. I haven't heard anyone else in the media mention this as a possibility. They're all defending Bubba Wallace from the public thrashing that he's taking over this incident. He's went from the victim to the villain in about 48 hours. Right now, I feel bad for Bubba Wallace. If he didn't have anything to do with this, and he's taking all of this abuse publicly for it being overblown, for it being a hoax, then that really sucks for him. That's fucked up. However, if it ends up coming out that this was all a publicity stunt and Bubba Wallace was a part of it or behind it, then he's getting what he deserves right now. The reality of it is, we will probably never know. We will never know the truth. If it does end up being some type of publicity stunt for ratings for NASCAR, then that is a sickening thing for them to do. To one, use Bubba Wallace to do it. And two, to use a real problem that this country is facing to increase their business, to increase their mainstream appeal, to increase their television ratings. It would not be the first time a company has used a social issue or a problem to advance their business. It happens in politics all the time. I sincerely hope that is not the case here, and it's just an overreaction by NASCAR and Bubba Wallace. All right, that's all for today. Hit that like and subscribe button for me. You can click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Thank you guys that continue to do so. It goes a long way in getting more eyes on the channel. I appreciate it. Leave me a comment in the section below. What do you think about the NASCAR and Bubba Wallace situation? Do you think it's a possibility that this could be some kind of publicity stunt to gain ratings? Let me know your thoughts. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. If you have any questions for me, you can email them to BTLKC84@gmail.com. I will see you guys next time.